I decided to listen to some music today. One of the albums I listened to today, there was an album that came out. It was like some early 2021 shit. And all year I kept trying to tell myself, like, just listen to this album, dude. And that album was A Day to Remember's new album called You're Welcome. Hey, it came out earlier this year. I forget when. It was pretty damn early, let me tell you. The only reason I knew of its existence was because a friend of mine posted on a mutual friend's Facebook page asking them, hey, what do you think of the new A Day to Remember album? I hadn't heard it yet, so I had no opinion of it, and I didn't even know what to expect. I had no idea to come out, and I was like, oh, I'll listen to it at some point, and then I'll come up with my own thoughts on it. So I finally listened to it today. I was like, damn it, I'm listening to this damn album finally. Overall, I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was a solid album. It was very A Day to Remember, if that makes sense. It was a very A Day to Remember album. It's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. And in fact, I don't even consider it to be a mediocre thing, because after I heard it, I was sitting there thinking about it, just thinking about the stuff that I liked about the album, the stuff I didn't like, and just thinking about ADTR in general. And they're a very interesting band to talk about, I think. Let me talk about the album first before I go into detail about A Day to Remember and some of my thoughts that I have on them. It is a very A Day to Remember kind of style album. Typical A Day to Remember sound to it, that pop punk feel to it. I will say there was a lot more songs on this album that felt like radio friendly to an extent, as radio friendly as A Day to Remember can be. And they also decided to try something new with this album, and they implemented a couple electronic elements here and there with the album. It was cool though. I liked what they did. A Day to Remember has a sound, and they're kind of like the MCU of pop punk. They have a bunch of different types of songs, and all the songs but overall it's the same general feel. Like when you watch a movie in the MCU, like a Marvel movie in the MCU, you know what you're getting into, right? You know the general feel, the general tone that the movie's gonna have, but they all kind of center around they have like different themes to them, and both in story, but also in terms of like kind of the style of the character. For instance, take, I don't know, like the Iron Man movies. Iron Man movies, very all about like technology and like the question of how can technology help us but also hurt us. It's kind of asking, it's being just like a crazy action movie, whereas Captain America Winter Soldier was a government conspiracy movie. They have a general overall feel, you know what you're getting into, but every movie kind of has its own little subset. A Day to Remember is the same way. You know what you're getting into with A Day to Remember album. You know what to expect from it. But every song, and even to an extent each album, kind of has a different overall feel to it. Like it's still got that A Day to Remember sound. You know, they push the boundary a little bit. Instead of just being a straight pop punk song, they're doing something that sounds a little bit more closer to metalcore. Or maybe they're doing something that sounds a little bit more close to punk. Or maybe they're doing something, in this new album, they did something that borderline sounds like reggae. Like it sounded like a reggae tune. I liked it. It was cool. I was like, this is a summertime jam, if there is any, but I was like, this is kind of weird. Like it's kind of like a pop punk album or a metalcore album. Literally the first like quote heavy song unquote in the album doesn't happen until like 3, maybe 4 songs in. And it's like the third or fourth song that's the first song to have like a full blown breakdown and everything. But it's got a lot of cool stuff like that. I like it. And it's like A Day to Remember knows what their sound is, knows what they want to do, and they do it well. They know how to do it, and they know how to do it well, and then they just expand from there. I didn't get too bored listening to the album. My big thing with albums is, especially like these pop punk bands or these metalcore bands, the albums tend to get real boring for me. And let me make this clear. I love me rock. I love me some metal. But my God, if every song just sounds like I will lose my mind. And luckily with the Day to Remember album with You're Welcome, it was it wasn't too crazy. It was like every song was different to some extent. I will say, I think Every Day to Remember, I've listened to almost every Day to Remember album. Usually towards the end, they get kind of squeezing out every last idea they have, because it starts to kind of get a little sluggish and get just a wee bit repetitive. But they usually pull through, and they end on a nice note. Yeah, there was one song that really stuck out to me. It was like it was that one acoustic song that happens in the middle of the damn album. But it was a very somber song, and it was very somber and thoughtful. I'm just gonna assume that the singer Jeremy McKinnon, I guess maybe he had a close relationship with his grandmother, and I guess she passed away either prior to the making of the album or while they were making the album. And there was a song he wrote just kind of talking about that, kind of letting out his feelings about it, and it comes across in the song. It comes across in the song really well, and there's a lot of heart. I didn't personally relate to it, like I didn't feel a personal connection to the song, but I could tell there was like a lot of heart. I definitely recommend going and check it out. If you like pop punk, metalcore, if you like Today Remembers older stuff, if you like Common Courtesy, I think that's the closest one. If you were cool with Common Courtesy, you were like, hell yeah, Common Courtesy's dope. Check out You're Welcome. I think you'll like it. I find A Day to Remember a very interesting band. I was thinking about this earlier. They really push the boundaries for their genre and how they make their music. Most pop punk metalcore bands, especially from the time that A Day to Remember was getting big, typically they'll fall into the same trap where they put out an album, but every song, let's be honest, every song sounded way too similar to the last one. A prime example I personally use, if you've ever listened to The Devil Wears Prada, and you listen to their album with Roots Above and Branches Below, every time I listen to that album, I get from the first song to the last song, and I swear to God, I thought I was listening to the exact same song the entire time. Every song on that album sounds way too similar to the last one. But I remember they don't fall into that trap. They're one of those few bands that they found a way to still have their signature sound, but they're able to like change it up just enough that they can kind of push the boundary on what genre they're playing. Like, yeah, it's still pop punk, it's still metalcore, it's still that you still get that feel from it. But sometimes you have a song that feels more like, oh, this could be Blink 182 inspired, but then you hear another song, you're like, oh dude, this is very like Deftones inspired. And I like that personally. I think it makes their albums, A Day to Remember's albums really interesting to listen to. Because personally, I'm very big on an album keeping my attention. Like, I want to go from song 1 to song 2 and be like, yeah, definitely different songs. And I don't mean song 1 ends and then it very clearly ends and there's a break and then song 2 starts. Then at that point, I'm like, well, congrats. You just made a collection of 10 songs that you could have just released as singles for 10 weeks instead of releasing a full-blown album. I'll be honest, I do get a little finicky and pretentious when it comes to albums. Listen, it's my personal opinions, it's my personal taste in music. When I do listen to an album, I do try and keep in mind most people don't listen to albums the way I do. So sometimes I can hear an album and I go, oh, you know what? I don't care for this album, but I know people who would. I can usually recognize if someone's going to be like, yeah, this album's good. I like this album. I'm like, okay, cool. I didn't like it, but I can understand why you liked it. So yeah, I mean, A Day to Remember just changing. It's funny because A Day to Remember changing their style so much like that, like, or pushing the boundary on that style. It was reminding me of a quote. It's a quote that I think about very often. My favorite artist of all time, period. Favorite artist of all time, period, is his name is Jeff Williams. If you don't know who Jeff Williams is, he has written music for seasons 9 and 10 of Red vs. Blue, and he is currently the composer for RWBY, the show RWBY, created by Rooster Teeth. He is my all-time favorite artist, period. There's just no, I determined one day, and to this day, all his music is fantastic to me. There was a panel he did years ago. I don't know, the topic came up of like why every song's so different, or what his writing process is, or something. I think it was like what his writing process is or something. And Jeff Williams said, I quote, he said, "I want every song to be different. He's like, because I don't want to write the same song for every album. I would get bored." He's like, so that's why I make every song different. And that was a quote that just stuck with me, because he truly does live by that word. If you listen to you can go listen to any of the Ruby albums. And I highly suggest it, because all of Jeff Williams' music is fantastic. And just the songs, not the scores, just the songs that he writes. Every song is so different from the last. They're like not the same. Some of them have the same feel, but they're fairly different. They're like all different. I mean, literally I think volume 3 is like the prime example of it, where it starts with like, here's a rock song. It's a pretty like heavy, crazy rock song. And then like, here's a straight up just EDM jam. And it's like, all right, now here's a piece of music that's like very jazz inspired and stuff. It's all so different. And personally, I fucking love it. Like there's a little bit of everything, which is awesome. And that's what I like about Day to Remember, is all their albums do that. They do just a little bit of everything. Just a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Makes it fun to listen to their work. One last thing about Day to Remember, I don't have too much else to say. Definitely go check out You're Welcome if you haven't. I think it's a solid album. Worth listening to, especially if you're a fan of Common Courtesy. That's probably the closest album I would equate to You're Welcome. But funny story about A Day to Remember, there are two friends of mine that I remember I went to go to a concert with them, and A Day to Remember was opening, or they were co-headlining, I think. And my two friends, they were genuinely like, honestly, we would be fine if we didn't see A Day to Remember today. We kind of just want to see these other bands, but if we missed A Day to Remember, we wouldn't care. I was like, really? Why is that? They were like, we've seen A Day to Remember 9 times at least. And I was like, how does that happen? They're like, we never did it on purpose. They were like, anytime we've gone to a concert, we're going to a specific concert to go see a specific band, and A Day to Remember for some reason is co-headlining or they're opening. Like they've seen A Day to Remember live so many times just because they were going to see other bands and that band happened to be there. Kind of a testament to the versatility of A Day to Remember's music, that they could tour with almost any band and not have an issue.